Hi there folks, Uncle Troy here. Today we're going to talk about taxes, racism, misleading advertisements, and some bad customer experiences I've had in the past. But first we're going to say hello to some new subscribers. And we're back. Okay, today we're going to talk about some serious stuff. Generally I try to avoid stuff like death, taxes, racism, serious social issues. Instead I just tell nice funny stories from my childhood. So if you're here for just the funny regular Uncle Troy stuff, stand by. If you're here for the serious stuff, I'm going to put some links down in the video description below that tell you when we jump to the serious stuff. So if you're here for the funny stuff, stand by until I tell you we're getting serious. And if you're here for the serious stuff, hit the links below to skip all the fluff. Okay? Alrighty, so I have just recently finished my income tax for 2012, and I actually did it online at a company called TurboTax. And a couple of things struck me about that I'm going to discuss later. But first, I'm going to explain why I've printed out my tax returns. Why I've printed it out and I'm about to be mailing it in. I already found my stamps, nice little forever stamps here, and I printed it out. I'm going to mail it in, even though there was an option to e-file. And there's a couple of reasons why I didn't choose to e-file. Reason number one was that in the past when I've tried to e-file, it's asked me for an e-file identification number of some sort, which I don't have. I've never gotten one. And I don't know where I'm supposed to get them. I don't know how I'm supposed to get them. I just know that I don't have one. So I can't use that. So they say, well, no problem. You can identify yourself by using information from a previous year's tax return. Just enter your adjusted gross income or something like that from line number whatever, 7. And then we can use that to make sure that you are the person you say you are and that it's okay for you to e-file. But unfortunately, when I try that, apparently I made a mistake, because even though I have the old tax returns from the previous year right here in front of me, and I type it in exactly as it is, it comes back a week later and says, wrong information, we can't file. So I tried it again, wrong information. I tried it again, dropping off the dollars and cents at the end, or the cents at the end. No, it wouldn't go. So I'd end up having to print it out and send it in anyway. So that's why I just decided this year I'm just going to go ahead and print it out, mail it in, be done with it. I have to find an envelope though. I don't have a lot of those laying around for some reason. So, and if I keep looking over here, it's because that's where I've left my forms. And a W-2. I remember when a W-2 was a full page, but that's another thing. So another reason why I don't e-file is that I am not comfortable sending financial information through electronic means. And you may say, well, you know, I'm on the internet. I'm a YouTube sensation for sufficiently small values of sensation. I have a successful website for sufficiently small values of successful. But I don't want to send information about my finances through the internet to file my income tax return electronically and get my refund faster. In fact, I've also asked that I get a check mailed to my address for my refund instead of directly depositing it. And that all goes back to about, sheesh, how many years ago? 1980 something, late 80s. Back then, you didn't have internet service providers. You had online service providers like CompuServe and Delphi and America Online, later known as AOL, also known as a source of free coasters, for those of you who get that reference. And I used to be a member of CompuServe, and I went with CompuServe for two reasons. One, it was cheaper than whatever other service I was looking at. It was only like $4.95 a month. And two, they had a local calling number that I could call to access the internet, because back then you didn't, just plug in a cable to the wall or whatever. You had to use modems to connect through the phone lines, which dialed a number connected to a modem on the other end. Modem is a modulator, demodulator, and use that to talk from one computer to another. And since I lived out in a rural area, most of the online services said, well, you'll have to call major metropolitan area miles and miles away, kilometers and kilometers away, which was outside of my local calling area. And for those of you who don't understand local calling area, here in the United States we have numbers that are something like area code, exchange, number. And I have mail. Actually, that probably didn't pick up on the microphone. I didn't need to mention it. But I have mail. You're supposed to turn those off before you do a webcast, by the way. So you have, the area code, exchange, and local number. And basically people in your geographical area have the same area code and exchange, and people further away have different exchanges, and people further away than that have different area codes. Should have figured this out before I started. So the problem is that depending on how tightly packed the people are in your area, there may be a huge geographical distance covered by a single area code or single exchange. And there may be other things like county lines and state lines. So local call might be, I might be able to call somebody down the street, it's a local call, across town it's a local call, other side of the state it's a local call, but then turn around and somebody just across the county line this way is a long distance call. And you say, what's the difference? Well, here in the United States at least, most local phone companies do not charge you by call or by minute or whatever for local calls. Those are more or less free. They're covered in your standard package. So I could call somebody in my local calling area and talk for hours, no additional fee. I could call somebody on the other end of the state for 5 minutes and run up $20 worth of charges. And yes, calling in-state is more expensive than calling out-of-state, because when you call out-of-state, the phone company has more competition and gives you lower rates. Seriously. They bump up the cost of the in-state calls to make up for the free local calling and the fact that they have to be more competitive with the out-of-state calls. So because CompuServe had a local number that I could call and would not give me any long-distance calls or long-distance charges, I went with CompuServe for my online service provider, which was all great and dandy, except that come my first phone bill, it said long distance charges, and it was that number that I'd been calling to get to Comcast. So I called up Comcast customer service to complain. I mean, not Comcast, CompuServe. How many times did I say Comcast there? CompuServe is what we're talking about. So I called up CompuServe customer service to complain, and was basically told that no, I was mistaken, that it was a local call. Their records showed it was a local call, and that I needed to call my local phone company because obviously they made a billing error. So I called my local phone company, talked to them, and they basically said, no, that's an outside of your local calling area. You were billed correctly. So I called back CompuServe and got a busy signal or something. So by that time I was just upset, didn't want to talk to people anymore. So I pulled up my CompuServe email account and basically typed in that, because I checked with my phone company, it is a long distance call. I cannot afford to pay your access fee and the long distance call. Please cancel my account at the end of the current billing cycle. And then I stopped calling because, of course, it was a long distance call. So a month went by, and I got I was looking for one of my bank statements laying around here. I got a bank statement that said that CompuServe had billed my bank account again for the monthly fee. And I had set up something called electronic fund transfer. First one I'd ever set up. Thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Have the company automatically take money out of your bank account to pay your bill, all automatically. They don't send you a bill. You don't have to write them a check. All automatically. And I thought that was great, and I set it up. Not realizing the problem was that if I had trouble with the service and wanted to cancel, they had my banking information and could keep sucking money out of my account. So I called them up again and said, why are you still taking money out of my bank account when I have already canceled my service? And they said they had no record of me canceling the service. And I said, well, I sent you an email on such and such date. And they said, oh, that's the problem. Email is not a reliable way to do business. We do not accept cancellations through email. And I'm like, it's your email service. Yes, but it's not reliable, so we can't take cancellations through email. Did you receive the email? Well, even if we did, because email is not a reliable way to do business, we wouldn't have done anything as instructed in the email. And I'm like, why do you have a customer service email address if you don't allow customer service issues to be worked on from the email. Oh, that's for people that like have technical problems, can't log in, etc. And we just forward those over to technical support. I said, but you can't cancel or change your account through email. No, because email is not a reliable way to do business. And remember, this is CompuServe saying this about CompuServe's email service. Not a reliable way to do business. And it turns out there was no like form you could go to on the CompuServe. Well, back then we didn't call them websites, but basically it was a CompuServe website portal. There was no place you could go there and click a button, because also that was not reliable. So I had to tell them on the phone, cancel. So another month went by, another automatic electronic fund transfer. And I said, okay, screw this, called them up again. They don't have any record of my previous phone call. So I ended up having to write out I'm going, please cancel my account, blah, blah, blah. So I called them up and asked for the fax number of their legal department. And they said, why do you need to know that? And I said, because I've asked you 2 times to cancel my account and you haven't. I'm sending you this last one in writing, and I'm going to take legal action if you don't accept it, if you don't cancel my account. So finally they gave me an address to send it into, a different address than the normal customer service address. I sent in my letter, and I tried logging in a couple days later, and sure enough my account had been closed. Cool. Next month, picked up my bank statement, another charge from CompuServe. So I called them up again, and basically they did receive my letter. They did cancel my account, but because I had attempted to access my account after it was closed as a service to me, they had automatically reopened it. So I said, what do we have to do to close it in a way that can never be reopened? And apparently there's not that option. Apparently if you dial up that number and enter your user ID and your password, they will automatically reopen your account if you've ever had an account with them before. So I again got them to close the account. This time they took it over phone. Went to my bank and said basically any charges from CompuServe, electronic fund transfers, deny. And they said, well, we can't deny from one particular company. All we can do is turn off electronic fund transfers for your entire account. And I said, fine and dandy. So as far as I know, 20 odd years ago, I turned off electronic fund transfers to my account, and supposedly it's still off. And when they check and they pull up my account, it is still off. I cannot accept electronic fund transfers to or from my account, except that my paycheck every 2 weeks from my employer automatically gets entered into my account somehow, even though electronic fund transfers are turned off. So that is why I don't really trust something as important as my income tax returns to some kind of electronic filing system. I prefer to waste the stamp and send it in manually. Okay, that is the fun, fluffy, Uncle Troy tells a weird story part of the thing. When we come back, we will be on the serious stuff. And we're back. Okay, the serious stuff, the stuff that I don't usually talk about on my website, because I like to keep things light and entertaining and not serious and dark and depressing. So I don't usually talk about death, taxes, etc. So when I was filling out my form on TurboTax website, I'm trying to see if I have something with TurboTax emblem on it here to show you. Maybe I'll just put it up here. 2 things really bothered me. One was when I was filling out the forms, or when I first started filling it out, it said basically, let's start over. I had went to the TurboTax website because I was told that it was pretty low price, especially compared to my local income tax preparers. And I refuse to do business with any of the local income tax services because I went to one of them one year on the recommendation of a friend. It was supposed to be cheaper than one of the professional places. Went to a local mom and pop accounting firm. It turned out to be twice as much. It turned out they did they'd not taken some deductions that they could have. They probably saved me money overall because they had done some things right that I didn't know about. But still, the fact that it ended up costing about twice as much as I thought it would. And then it turns out that, see, when I walked in, I said, hey, Mike blank, we won't say his name, sent me. He says he's a customer of yours, you've been doing his account. He says, oh yeah, how is Mike? We do his returns every year. In fact, we just talked to him last week. So that put me off guard because I thought, well, I've come here at a recommendation of a friend. He's told me how great this service is. So I went ahead and had them prepare the service, and then when they're finished and they ask for payment, which was never been discussed, other than me saying at the start that, y'all gave Mike a good deal, I expect the same. Then it turns out that no, they don't charge less than the big name companies. They charge more because they're a small company and can't afford to give discounts like the big company. And I said, well, what about the great deal you gave to Mike Blank? And I said, well, actually, we don't know a Mike Blank. And I said, really? You told me he was a customer and that you'd just seen him the week before. And said, oh, well, we thought you were just making conversation. We didn't know that was what you were basing your business decisions on. Okay, do you take Visa? Well, no, we don't accept credit cards for payments for tax services. And I said, really, even though you have this Visa logo and MasterCard and Discover on your front door, oh, that was left over from the earlier tenants. So, as you can tell, I've had a bad experience with local tax preparers. Don't want to mess with them anymore. So, I'd heard good things about TurboTax, fairly cheap, so I went online and I found out that better than cheap, they have a free service. In fact, if all you're doing is your standard, basic federal tax return, not a state return, not some kind of exotic return. Standard, basic federal income tax is free. Free, standard, basic. And we're going to put that up there. Free, standard, basic. I went into this thinking this will be free. So answer the questions. Question here, question here, question here. Enter stuff from my W-2 form. Answer questions about where I live. What other expenses do I have, etc., etc. And I noticed that at some pages, when you went down there, at the bottom, there were these links. And it would say something like back, which of course would take you back to the previous page. And then something like continue with basic. And then no thanks. No thanks, continue with basic. I'm always mixed up because this is opposite of a mirror here. But basically your options are go back, say no thanks, or continue with basic. And that confused me because I thought, well, I'm getting the free basic federal income tax, free basic. Well, it turns out that basic just doesn't describe the actual package you're using. Basic was just a descriptive term for describing federal income tax but not state income tax or special forms. Because it turns out that basic is actually the lowest tier of their product that they sell. For $19.95, a savings of $20 over the usual $39.95 or $39.99, whatever. And when it said back, no thanks, continue with basic, what it was saying was go back to your previous page. No thanks, I don't want to upgrade to basic. I want to continue on with the free version, or I want to switch over to the free or to the paid version, the basic package for $19.99. So you put everything in correctly. The proper thing to go on to the next thing is no thanks. And that struck me as very misleading. If you went in expecting free basic and you wanted to get to a page where it said no thanks or continue with basic, you would say continue with basic, not realizing you were signing up for the $19.99 plan. So I had to, of course, and if you go back here mid-range in some little print, it explains everything. So you got all this stuff you filled in, you skip down to the bottom to go on. Very easy to click the wrong button. So that is a problem. I think TurboTax is very misleading like that. And at the end, I was offered a chance to take a survey. I filled out the survey and said, you're very misleading with this. You should, if it's free, it should be free. You should make it very clear which, continue with free, upgrade to paid. Not no thanks, continue with basic. Okay, I think that they were just trying to get people to click wrong and then end up owing $19.99 and having their income tax return held hostage for that $20 payment. Now, $20, if they just said right up front, our cheapest package is $20 and handles most of you. You can upgrade to a higher tier later if we come across something you can't handle with basic. Click here to accept the $20. I would have accepted the $20 because TurboTax actually saved me $100 on my income tax return, because by filling out a normal form that I would not fill out, the 880, concerning my retirement savings contributions, my tax liability was $100 less. I wasn't going to have to pay a certain amount. Now I'm getting back a certain amount. Net savings of $100. So I would have gladly paid $20 to save $100. That's like a 400% in return on investment. Good stuff. But because I started out free and they tried to trick me into paying $19.99, I came away with a generally bad customer experience. Still think it's a great deal, and I still think these are great people, and I still recommend TurboTax, but you have to be careful what you click on. And I shouldn't have to make that type of restriction to my endorsement, I guess you should say. I shouldn't have to say, it's a real good deal, try it, but be careful because they'll trick you. I mean, I just don't see why they couldn't have arranged that better with the no thanks basic. So that's my main problem with TurboTax, was the misleading part. The second part of TurboTax, which I hesitate to bring up, but it did disturb me greatly when I was filling out the forms, was the racist angle. At one point early on, where you give your name, your address, your social security number, because it is an income tax return after all, so you have to give them your social security number. And actually I like that because they got these little "what is this" things that pop up from time to time, and you click on that and it pops up a little thing explaining the reason. For example, the federal government keeps track of your Social Security and other benefits by using your Social Security number. Therefore, for your income tax to properly track the Social Security taxes and whatnot which were withheld, we need your Social Security number. That was all explained. Perfect. A couple of questions later, they asked me to identify my ethnic group. And we have options like white/Caucasian, black/African American, Hispanics/Spanish/Latino, I think Asian, American Indian, and other. And so I was trying to figure out which one of these I needed to click on, because I know I look white as mayonnaise on white bread. My complexion is compared to fish bellies. But if you go to one of my family reunions, you will see that our family tree has many interesting and unique branches. Ideally, in an ideal world, going by my genealogy, I could probably click one of several of those, 2 or 3 at least, of those different boxes. But I wondered, why do they need my ethnic group to calculate my taxes? Because that should have nothing to do with it. So they got the why is this? What is this? Why are we asking you this? Little link. Clicked on it. We asked your ethnic group so we can provide you with a better customer experience. And that really doesn't say anything. All that's so. And I was thinking, okay, what do they mean by customer service experience? Better customer. I mean, if I click one of these items, am I going to get questions that other ethnic groups don't get? Am I going to be allowed to take certain deductions that other ethnic groups don't get? I mean, is it true, the crazy kooky conspiracy rumors that some ethnic groups don't pay income taxes or get refundable tax credits that other ethnic groups do not? I mean, how is it possible? And if they had said something like, we have to track this information for the federal government so we can prove that we provide consistent customer experience amongst many ethnic groups, and we do not discriminate or play favorites, I could understand why they need to ask. Or if they just said, we're tracking this for internal purposes, or this is going to determine what type of marketing you get, or this will allow you to choose a different language or a different font style or something, so you can do your, if you're Asian, you can do it in Japanese, Chinese, whatever, or if you're whatever, then I could understand it. But just to say this is to improve your customer experience, that strikes me as racism. That strikes me as in they're not answering the question. They're not saying why they need this information. And I was so confused, and I'm even going to say disgusted, by them asking that information with a non-answer for why they need it, that I came very close to just clicking and closing the window and finding some other way of doing my taxes. It really disturbed me, and I don't really know why. And I actually put that in my, like I said, they asked me to do a survey at the end, and I put that in there. I don't understand why you're asking this. I don't understand what purpose it is. Your explanation is a non-explanation that does not answer my questions. And it just adds fuel to the fire for the crazy conspiracy kooks who say that certain ethnic groups do not pay taxes or get refunds that other ethnic groups don't. So hopefully they'll get back to me, because I did give them my email address and have requested them to explain this to me. And if they do, I'll post another video. So there you have it. Overall, TurboTax pretty good customer experience, except for the misleading clicks and the possible racism. But they did save me $100 and ended up being a free return. So that's $100 that I wouldn't, well, I was going to have to pay a little in. Now I'm going to get some back. So net savings, $100 to me. And there'll be, hopefully the federal government, as soon as I get around to mailing this here later today, will send me my check, and I'll do something. Maybe I'll buy a new webcam or something, because I still don't like this Microsoft LiveCam HD Cinema. Okay, it's Uncle Troy signing out. Please have a good night.